Welcome to the Exchange Artist Workshop series. We are super excited to be here today with ADHD, someone who I really consider to have left a very powerful imprint on what I consider to be digital art and has really pushed the conversation further. And for those of you just joining us on this series, the goal here is to get a little bit deeper than we do in Twitter Spaces or in our normal interactions with artists and really learn and extract some value from the things that they have done and that have led you to be the person that you are and the artist that you are. So first of all, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, my friend. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, super excited to get to learn a little bit more about you. I feel like especially with digital art and the style of art that you do, you don't get as much you don't get to like jump as much into the person, which it might just be like a thing that I think of, but it's with a photograph or with an illustration, you can easily kind of connect the dots and say like, oh, this is who this person is. But I would love to just kind of start at the beginning. How did you come to be ADHD?
Well, that's a complicated question. um, well, I also go by Colin, and I guess I can't really talk about my my personality or my quality as an artist, as a digital artist, without talking about my roots as a traditional artist and a musician and sort of like a person who's kind of been involved in, I'd say, like um underground culture for as long as I can remember, like pretty much early teens, like getting into like punk rock and sort of like zine culture, graffiti, all that kind of stuff, like very young. And I'd say, like, without giving you like a super long thing where I ramble on for about an hour before you get to ask the second question, I would just say like um ADHD. I truly have ADHD. It's been part of my being ever since I knew what it was. I was diagnosed at like 13 or something like that, and it's something that kind of like plagues my existence. But at the same time, I think I see it more as like I'm learning more and more about neurodivergency and just how the way I think and the way I see the world is also sort of like a blessing and part of my creative process. So about almost 2 years now, when I got into NFTs, I wanted sort of a fresh start and had been experimenting with this style that was heavily influenced by, I think, a lot of my previous artistic endeavors, but was very concentrated in digital work and you know um, I think heavily influenced by uh, kind of like uh, post graffiti, post abstract expressionism, um, and I'd say even like that early zine culture, just grittiness and probably like 90s electronic music. I don't know. I had this very like, small body of work, but it all felt related. So I decided at the time I was working on Tezos, and I had sort of like a total fucking mishmash wallet of work that was like all kinds of different experiments. And this was prior to like Object or any other um website that would allow you to sort of curate a collection. It was all just like whatever you minted was just there.
Right.
And I felt like it was irritating my ADHD. Like my obsessive compulsive side was getting very like, man, this is just making me feel really scattered. And um so I just decided to start a fresh wallet. And rather than calling it by my name, I was just sitting in the moment like, what can I call this? And I think I wanted to lean a little bit more into like the pseudo anonymity of crypto art. And I just wrote ADHD and to my surprise, there was no other wallet with that name, and I just started utilizing that. And that was pre like even having my Twitter handle and everything. I was still going by Colin Circa at that time, and it just that's how the adventure began, and then it just sort of spiraled out from there, and I've sort of embraced it fully, and now I'm basically focusing on this full time and have been for over a year now. So
That's really cool to hear, like how all of these different things kind of converged into this moment of like, aha, like I think I
yeah,
know what I'm doing now here. Like,
yeah, my super villain origin story, it all it came together in that moment.
could you talk a little bit? You mentioned a little bit like you have a traditional art background. Could you just talk a little bit about like where you were creatively in that time versus what people know you for now?
Yeah, totally. So I guess it's still somewhat untraditional in that I didn't go to art school. Basically self-taught artist. Have been drawing ever since I was a kid, and then all throughout middle school, high school, and all that stuff. Was always obsessed with creating stuff, and I'd say in high school it started like morphing from like just doodling in and like going to like after school art programs here and there, into a thing where I was getting really into like graphic design, and also heavily into graffiti and I guess you could say like kind of like neo surrealism, like a lot of the artists who were very very like popular on like High Fructose magazine and Juxtapose, and like all those worlds were really kind of like starting to influence me. And I started painting a little bit more seriously, and then I decided after high school, like, oh, I want to go to art school, or I want to be an artist is basically what I thought. But at the time I was kind of like skeptical about going to some expensive school, like A, because I couldn't afford it, but B, because like I didn't know if I really wanted to do that. So I went to like a community college and enrolled in as an art major, and and I liked a lot of it like in the foundation year, but I wound up having this like I had a couple professors that like didn't like me and didn't like the way I kind of just like didn't I've never really handled direction very well, but like I really felt like there was like this certain like rigidness to some of the classes that really irritated me. And I had one professor tell me literally like in front of the whole class, like tell me that like I was a shitty artist and that I should like reconsider my path, and like that I'll never do anything worthwhile, and like just like totally, and like really just said like no, seriously, like pulled me after class, like pulled me aside and was like, you should seriously like drop out, like you should change your major, like
Oh my God.
you're not cut out for this. And it actually like stuck, so I did. And so I went, started working full time. I was like working like at Best Buy, like slinging electronics, and like working at Hot Topic, and um I was playing in a lot of like punk bands and stuff at the time, and one of my bands decided to try to go like full time. So um I did that for a year, and then that band broke up, and I decided like I'm going to go back to school, but go back for like film. So I went back. I wound up changing it to like communications general, because I was also heavily into like design and stuff like that. But so I got like a little associate's degree in film, um and then wound up starting a new band, and that band got signed. That band is called Circa Survive, and um what I thought would probably just be like a year or two of fucking around turned into like almost 20 years of fucking around,
Yeah.
as a full-time job. And during that time, like of being a full-time musician, you know, I had a lot of free time. I mean, I was busy all the time. I was traveling, but like when you're sitting at venues waiting to sound check or like whatever, there's just a ton of downtime. So I kind of rediscovered visual art at that time and started painting and drawing. And sooner than later, it became like a total obsession. And I started trying to submit to galleries and stuff. And that work was very surrealist influence. I mean, when I first started, it was totally abstract, which is really funny. Um, but I started feeling like insecure about my skills and felt like, well, I don't want to make abstract work just out of like necessity. You know, I want to make abstract work because I want to make abstract work. And I feel like in order to do that, I have to learn how to do everything else. So I started just really getting interested in learning how to paint, you know, figures like, you know, the human body, like animals, buildings, everything. I just got obsessed with it. And I would say like my work kept evolving from like it started purely abstract into like somewhat abstract with like little figures popping in and out, and then just became more and more kind of like figurative and surrealist. And you know, I'd say like, you know, at a certain point it really it was competing for my time, like to the same extent that the band was. I was doing it full time, like doing gallery shows and a lot of like group shows, but also I would do a solo show like every couple of years. Um and then I was constantly like, you know, promoting on Instagram, slinging prints like everybody else, doing all that kind of stuff, making art books, making zines, calendars, all that kind of stuff. And I still do it. I still am doing it, but it's funny that like a lot of my figurative work has started to like a lot of my like acrylic paintings start to look like digital. like like I'm incorporating like glitches and stuff into the acrylic paintings and stuff. And so all along the way I started using digital art as a like a huge part of my tool set of how I was laying out my paintings. And so I was working on the computer more and more. I would like create these mock-ups before I would make the acrylic painting. And so I was spending a lot of time on the computer, and then I would start doing these like sort of digital experiments that were like very abstract and like very like just totally left of center from what I was doing for galleries and stuff and what I was known for. But it was really fulfilling, and it was kind of like my like way to um just warm up or like just break like certain kind of like rigid mindsets I would get into creatively, kind of break out of those boxes by working on digital abstract work. And then but I never really showed it at all. Then slowly but surely I started sharing some of my digital experiments on Instagram here and there. Some of them were like maybe like text based, others were like video based, and then some of the abstract stuff would start popping in there. And then that's when I really, I would say around like 2017, I found crypto, um, and I was like, oh, like maybe this could be a way to like help pay the bills more or whatever, you know. Like I didn't really see at first I didn't see any connection to art. It was just like maybe this is just a means to like, you know, make a few extra dollars, like so that when things slow down and I'm freaking out about money, I can freak out a little less. And then, you know, like around the end of that first like the crazy bull run that went up to 20K, is when I found like, you know, CryptoPunks and like the Dada art like people and like all these people who are like the early like first wave of NFTs before they called them NFTs. It was just crypto art. Um, People would say like, oh, it's a non-fungible token. Um, but they didn't even really bother saying that. It was just like crypto art. And I was learning more and more about like Ethereum and how, you know, you could kind of um associate artworks like this transaction on the blockchain, and it was like fascinating. And that's like when it was like, oh, like that's why I've been so attracted to this. Like this is why this is so fucking cool. And like sadly, I didn't feel confident enough at the time to dive in and really start like minting my work or anything. But at the same time, there wasn't really like, it was still pretty confusing. Like Super Rare hadn't come onto the scene yet. It was really like, yeah, it was a pretty weird time. Crypto kitties, crypto punks, all that stuff. But I was watching still the whole time, and I got really intrigued by like Decentraland and like just what was happening. So I was really like paying attention to all of it. But I just kind of like put my actual intent in diving in like on pause. And I was like, this is gonna get easier. I know it is. Like, and once it is, I'll figure it out. Because at the time, I really didn't, you know, I wasn't thinking anyone would ever care about my digital like abstract work. I thought, I'll figure out a way to like, you know, incorporate what I'm doing on canvas and wood panel like on there, or like I don't know, I'll figure something out, or I animate stuff, which is what I did eventually. But yeah, so eventually, I guess in 2020 is when I minted for the first time. It was like January of 2020, I want to say. Um, Is that right? I don't know. My time's all fucked up. But I was minting as Colin Circa, and I minted like an animated painting, and I made this long form song that went with it. That the person who bought the NFT, this was on Known Origin, was my like very first NFT ever. And the person that bought it would get this long form, like 30-minute version of the song. It was basically like this ambient kind of like um yeah, like an ambient experimental electronic thing that I made. And I was like, you're the only person that's ever going to hear this unless you want to put it out, in which you can, you'll get full rights to it or whatever. So I did that. And yeah, I mean the floodgates just kind of open from there. My friend Sarah Zucker, who known as the Sarah Show, she was like one of the first people to like really inspire me to like actually take the dive and get into it.
She's a genius.
Yeah, so good.
I also started off in like that kind of early crypto phase where it was really the Wild West in so many regards. It was just cool watching all of these people who got it. They were like, oh, finally, I have a place to put this crazy digital experiment that I've been doing for so long. That makes
Hmm.
sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, at first, I really was just like, I think I was just so excited for all the digital artists that I was like very, big fans of and influenced by. And I really at first had a lot of like imposter syndrome about if I even really belonged there. Like I was like, like I have my thing with galleries and making traditional work. Like I don't want to like just make digital work just to sell NFTs, or crypto art or whatever I was calling it at the time. Um, But slowly but surely, I just was like, you know what? I'm gonna like put more time into my own digital work and see what's what, And like I said, I mean, I really considered minting for like almost 2 years before I actually did it. So it was pretty crazy. It was scary. I saw it as like, like any new endeavor as an artist, you're just scared of rejection. You're scared to fail, and like by the time I actually did it, I just felt like there was nothing to lose, and that it was just something I had to do and be a part of because I thought it was so cool. Um, so yeah, but then eventually it was like, the work that I do now as ADHD is so creatively fulfilling. I mean, it's one of the best decisions I ever made as an artist, and I've never felt more at home or like more like comfortable in my own creative skin, like I really feel like um I still enjoy, like sitting down and making like an acrylic painting. That's my acrylic paintings don't look any I haven't really messed around with abstract work in physical form like this yet, but I do plan on doing that. But it's just a totally different mindset. I think I just have such a, I don't know, the connection I have to digital tools, and I probably link a lot of this to music, just becoming very fluid and like just super satisfied with working with digital tools and growing to the point where like when you first get a new like new software or whatever, it's really jarring. You feel like you're learning like a whole new language, like trying to figure out how to just like walk, but eventually you can like do exactly what your mind thinks like really fast, and it's like the most gratifying amazing feeling, so every time you like the band would like get a new DAW and we would like start recording on a new like set of tools, I'd be like, ugh! Like now I have to like it's gonna take me like 5 hours to record an idea, whereas before I got to the point where it would it would take me 5 minutes. But that's sort of the thing, is that I started eventually that process of like really getting to know digital tools and um kind of seamlessly becoming a part of an interface, and like all of that. I think there's a romance to it that I've succumbed to, and now that I can create um, visual art in that way, um, it's just so gratifying, especially thinking back to like learning Photoshop for the first time and just feeling like there was all these rules and that it was like, oh, I'm gonna fuck something up, and then like eventually it's like that's the point. It's like my nothing gives me more joy than like to do something by accident in Photoshop and it just looks super fucked up, and I'm like, yes, like this is awesome.
Then you start to like have fun figuring out how to recreate that. It
Yeah.
it is a lot of similarities, I think, between the music world and the world of creating digital art, because I think in so many ways, right, music was one of the first things to become digital art. All of
Yes.
these softwares and programs, uh, there was a lot of randomness to those as well, right? You look back at like synthesizers, a perfect example. It's like you keep
Mhm.
doing until it does.
Exactly, and I think like working recording music digitally for so long, I think has really informed my sense of confidence in that you can make your own rules, and that the eyes and the ears, like we really are fooled all the time about what's what. People like purists will sit there and be like I love this conversation about like why a digital drip, right? Like you're not using like a spray can where all of a sudden a drip happens. So why are you emulating that? Is that sort of you know backwards, and I understand that argument actually, and I think that for me, I've kind of like come to this place where I think about digital drips more as just another kind of line that I enjoy what it does to my brain when I look at that line, and like having it come off another form or whatever. I'm not trying to like fool people into thinking that it's a spray can drip. It's more that I actually just like the aesthetic of like what that line coming off that form is doing. Um, but in general, um, I liken that a lot to like digital reverbs and like sampled drums and stuff like that. And you're like, well, that's not a real drum, or like, why make it sound like a real snare drum if it's not, you know? Um and yeah, there's just all these different arguments. It's like to me, at the end of the day, all that matters is that it sounds badass, right? Or that it looks badass, or like that what you're doing. And what I mean by that, obviously not universally badass, but like to you, like you think it looks awesome, and then it's expressing something that that is important to you. And like yeah, so like I mean, I've known forever that like you can get like a $50 distortion pedal and make it sound amazing. Um, and so I feel the same way about using your phone or like using some shitty app or whatever it is. Like you know, obviously, like there are ways to cheapen work and make it kind of like cookie cutter in a way that's not self-aware. And maybe that can be problematic or whatever. But like, I think again, that's just all like it's kind of like the same as like the the kid that gets the starter guitar and gets the starter pedal and the starter amp, and it's like, oh yeah, that sounds like Super Guitar Center or whatever. But then like all of a sudden you start to see like one little element gets thrown in and you're like, huh, there's something really unique there. It's shining through the shittiness of that. And now the shittiness is almost appealing. What's happening, Like, so yeah, that's all to say, like, my experience in making music, like, being in the independent music world, I think has really given me a lot of confidence and given me a lot of, like, don't listen to people when they're, like, purists about, like, how you should be making things and, like, what you should be using to make it. It's all just about the final end result, you know?
Yeah, I think that's really important. As human beings, I think we tend to try to look for rules to give ourselves, and it's kind of fun when you can free yourself from that a little bit, right? It's like you don't
Yeah.
necessarily have to live in a constraint.
I like self-imposed rules that are, like, you
Mhm.
know, can be like springboards for creativity. It's like, oh, in this piece, I'm not gonna lean on this one trick that I used in this other piece, or you
Yep.
make these little rules for yourself. But like these like social rules or like industry wide rules to me are like meant to be broken. You know what I mean? It's like
Yep.
if you're too scared to like break those kind of rules, then you're gonna just wind up like you really just disappear into this like wall of noise of like everybody doing the same shit, you know? The people that stick out are the ones that are like, I don't know. I don't really like that. Like I would rather do this way. And then all of a sudden the work starts to stand out from the herd.
Absolutely. I'm curious about like overarching like digital art, right? Do you think that digital art has helped you find a voice that is that you otherwise would not have found?
Oh yeah, 1000%. I mean, I think in a lot of ways, like, I mean, um, it's been extremely psychedelic for me in a way that is like it has forced me to look at the act of making art and the ritual of making art and then the processes that I decide to embrace. And it makes me ask myself why, you know, like, why am I doing it that way? Am I doing that because that's what I know? That's what the norm is, like that's what I'm comfortable with, etc. You know, again, there's a romance to like taking out the easel, getting a wood panel, gessoing it, sanding it, you know, getting out the paints, mixing them up, using your brushes. Like there's a romance to that. I'll never not have a little bit of that in me. But there is just something so damn exciting for me to like grab like five different scraps of paper, grab some crayons, grab some crap, like scribble, like just draw freely, do whatever, scan them all in. Like, some of them I scan by using a scanner app on my phone. Other ones I actually am playing with the scanner. Like, make a folder of these scraps. Then I start like layering in photographs. Then I start digitally painting on that. Then I make a printout of that. Then I fucking scan the printout after I scrape it up or rip it up or whatever. Like that process to me feels so much more representational of like now, right? Like that what the world feels like to me right now. Like that process feels like it fits, Um like I'm not, and again, that's my own process. Um it's not like I haven't ever just like created a file in Procreate and just started digitally painting in there and then left it. Like I have done that too. But and like the reason I don't, you know, only do that, the reason why I have that crazy, you know, bananas, like back and forth mixed media approach is because it's so exciting to me and fulfilling to me. It's not because I feel like, oh, it's not quality or cool enough until I do that. It's just literally that scratches an itch for me that like I feel like that itch is literally just sort of the ineffable like um it's the target of like that I couldn't hit if I like tried to hit it, right? But if I go towards that feeling, if I go towards scratching that itch, if I go towards like satisfying my own artistic urges, then I'm more likely to hit that target because it's like I'm creating something like from this like really strong desire to please myself and like achieve a vision that is like barely um accessible to my conscious brain. Like it's like I literally see like the tip of the iceberg popping out and I'm like, "Oh, I just have to like go towards that and like it'll start to reveal itself to me." So, yeah.
Embracing the unknown almost. Like where can I go if I don't know where I'm going, you know?
Yes. I mean, it's so exciting to me to make this work and it's and the more I've sort of like burrowed deeper into this weird ass rabbit hole, um, I've gotten really lucky and gotten to the place where it's like, okay, um, I've had a lot of success in a short period of time and gotten to a place where I guess again, like my experience having success as a full-time creative prior to this, I've known like how to like manage financially in a way that affords me space creatively, right? Because
Mhm.
the more the more stable that I feel and the less like freaked out and desperate I feel for funds, the more I get to sort of like control my pace of how I mint, control um how much time can I spend experimenting rather than working on stuff that has to go out, whatever. So it's really yeah, right now I'm in a really beautiful place of like balancing that and feeling like for really the first time in my life where I don't feel like I have to like constantly do something to like make ends meet, right? Like I have a little bit of breathing room right now where I'm like, okay, cool. Like, and I'm experimenting every day and I'm barely even posting half the stuff I'm making. And that feels good. You know what I mean? Like feels, it feels like I'm way more in the creative process than I am in the promotional process, which I think
Yeah.
is one of the biggest challenges of being an artist, but especially in this space.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I can imagine too with work that is more abstract and more obscure that kind of doubling down has to be you have to have a very clear message, right? You have to be getting across what the intention was that you were trying to get across for the viewer to understand what that very complex piece is, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think I knew it was really important to me to, excuse me one second, I'm having an allergy attack. Give me one sec. um, so I knew that it was going to be important to me to not be a purely abstract artist, right? And what I mean by that is that I knew collage would come into the picture pretty early on. It started to come into the picture in my first series on Tezos, but like very slowly. I mean, the whole thing was a process of collage because every piece, even if it did come off purely abstract, would start with a photograph that I just obscured to oblivion.
Right.
But I think somewhere like in like, like, I don't know, in the first 30 pieces somewhere I started incorporating writing, words, and then also small pieces of collage that were kind of like showing through in some way. And then um, probably about a year into it, um, I started another series that was heavily collage based, but it was still like I would say it was like 50-50 collage painting because I knew that that was going to be the way that I could inject more narrative and more personality. Um, I think, and I bounce back and forth. Like I just did this series called Sleep Studies that is purely abstract. Like it's just color, line, form, texture. Like there are no words, there are no collage elements to it. And that felt amazing. But I feel like because I did a bunch of collage work prior to that and a bunch of work that was sort of mixed media based and had a lot of attitude and a lot of personality, that stuff gets projected onto this purely abstract work now, right?
Right.
In a similar way of if you look at someone like Tijo, like, you know, being able to do the blue phenomenon, right? That came from a body of work that was figurative and like very personal. And then when we just see this blank blue piece from him, we project all this other stuff onto that. And
Right.
so that's something I really do. Um, yeah, like I feel a lot of like connection to that type of like back and forth, going from purely abstract to mixed media approach that was, partially figurative and then partially abstract.
It's really interesting to think about that. You can almost like implant a voice from your overarching, brand as an artist or other collections into something that is more of a blank canvas for the viewer to kind of implant what they assume you to be or
Yeah,
their interpretation, right?
totally. And again, I think that this is coming from an experience with music. Um, you know, when you build a catalog of work, people get used to it, and they have this like relationship um, to the songs and sort of like the person that's making the songs, and then so it informs what they do going forward. So you know, a really extreme noisy punk band all of a sudden makes like just a no drums ambient like soundscape. There like it's not going to be the same as I was thinking about this the other day because I was listening to some like just like kind of like cheesy like ambient mix that was it's like a spa mix.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm like damn, like you could kind of like interchange this with like Brian Eno or like just a bunch of other like stuff that like I project so much more coolness onto it, but aesthetically side by side they're not that different.
Right,
um
right.
so I don't know, I think about that a lot, just like I think about what makes an artist's work valuable and like what makes it recognizable and what makes it something that you connect with, you know? And I think narrative and story, like is so important to that. Which is super fascinating in crypto art because so many of the artists are anonymous or like pseudo anonymous, or we only really see like their PFP or whatever they want to show us, right? Um, so then it becomes sort of like also related to like communication and like what are they tweeting? Who are they retweeting? Like what circles do they run in? All that kind of stuff starts to play a role in how you're perceiving their art, which I don't know how many people are consciously thinking about this stuff, but like to me, it's endlessly fascinating, and I know that a lot of people are, but probably the majority aren't yet. But I think I think that it's super interesting, and I think that's one of the more ineffable like qualities to what's happening here that it's hard for me to explain to some normie who I think I'm like, you should be interested in this, like you should like this, but I can't sell you on it in 5 minutes because it's
Yeah.
too complex.
Yeah. Hey, I can sell you this, but you got to figure out why you want to buy it. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
it's interesting to think about that though, because I don't think too many people um, try to look at themselves and their interactions from like a bird's eye view. And it's really important to do. It's like, why do I feel this way about a certain platform or a certain group of people or a certain influencer or a certain art? Like, why are these
Yeah.
human conditions kind of going into play? And I don't think that there's enough critical thinking on that in general, but it's been cool to watch as this space matures. More of that kind of enters, more people who are being vocal about like, hey, like observe what's going on. Don't just like be awash in like the motions.
Yeah, no, for sure. And there's just like, I don't know, it's really funny to see how like I think about this every day, like the experience of someone just coming into it, right? Like trying to find your way. Um, and it's just like, dude, there are 1,000 people on Twitter that will tell you what the right way is, right? And they're all different. Um, it's just interesting to me to watch people navigate that maze themselves. And I'm always there, like looking for people who maybe are like, the equivalent of like like in a video game they're like the character that's just like bumping against the wall like trying to like get out of the room but they don't know how like, and I look for those artists who like maybe just need a little bit of help, and I'm just like, shoot them a DM like, hey, what's up, like how you doing. They'll normally tell you like, I've been bumping against this wall for like 5 days, man, I don't know what I'm doing. um and then you can just offer them some advice. I find myself doing that more and more these days as I start to figure out the answers for myself. It's like
Mhm.
nothing gives me more pleasure than like saving other people time. It's like it makes me feel really useful because I'm like, oh, all that bullshit I went through is worth it now because I get to like I can give that to somebody else. But they have to get to a certain point before any of that stuff's worth anything. So
Yeah. Yeah, if not, then you're kind of they have to understand a certain something before that information even makes sense, right? It's like
yeah,
trying to read a book in Japanese. Like it's cool, but like I don't know
yeah,
what it says, you know.
yeah, yeah. Well, it's just
I'm
also like
curious.
it's like, go
Go
ahead.
ahead, sorry.
I was just rambling. I mean, I was just gonna make another like analogy and connection to like music. It's like a young band comes to you and they have like a demo of like 3 songs, and like they like want to go tour the world. It's like, all right, there's a lot of stuff to go from A to Z.
Yes.
There's a lot that
Yes.
has to happen.
Yep. I think it's a beautiful thing about humans being rather short-sighted.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that's inevitable.
Hmm.
I know it's kind of like pretty case by case basis, but I'm curious on like what are 3 common tips that you would give to digital artists who are trying to find and develop that voice?
Um. Well, I would say like, um, the first thing I tell a lot of people um, is to like before. I mean, it really depends. Yeah, like you said, it's case by case. But a common thing I find myself telling people is to make a small body of work before you mint the first one, because often it'll just really sharpen your intentionality and your editing ability. Like if you make a piece that's really exciting to you, that's new, and you're like thinking about minting it, if you can afford the time of just spending um, a little bit more of it in that world of that piece, and maybe trying to make, a sibling to it, and then from there expanding out to like, okay, maybe I can try to make like 5 pieces in this vibe. And what will often happen is you'll make a piece that's even better than that first one relatively quickly. And then you'll start understanding what's cool about it. And then you'll start expanding a little bit out on that. And then you'll start to feel like you have a little bit more just like room strategy wise for how you're going to present it. And um, yeah, I don't know. I just think in general, being less impulsive is good. The more, like, I think this is something I tweeted not too long ago, but like the difference between um, you know, intuition and compulsion is like very slight. And like you need, I think in this space, the more you can focus in on intuition and try to like keep your compulsion like at bay, your impulsivity at bay, the better off you're going to be, because impulsive decisions in crypto art can be really hard to come back from. They can really set you back and put you in a place where you're struggling to make progress. Whereas if you just move a little bit slower and maybe get input from other people, um, and input from yourself, really. Another thing I tell people is like, when you think you're done a piece, don't look at it for 24 hours, like before you decide that it's finished. Because I think a lot of us, especially if we're working with screens, you get to a place where what you're making in your brain looks amazing and you think it's so good because you've just been in it the whole time. But then when you take a step back from it, like 24 hours really will do the trick for me. If I don't look at it at all for 24 hours, the next time I look at it, I will know, is it really complete or does it need more? And also, I will know what it needs like instantly, rather than feeling scratching my head like, is this done? Like, I don't know. Like that's often a place I'll get to sometimes too. So I think that 24-hour gap is a great like fail safe for when you think you're done, but also a good practice when you feel stuck and you're not sure. There have been so many times where I overwork a piece, and that's the other. Okay, here's another tip: save as you go. When you feel like you've hit a spot, save a version of it, and it's like, okay, here's a version. Because there's been many times where I overwork a piece, and then I go back and I'm like, oh, I was already done like fucking 20 hours ago. I just didn't know it yet. But the rest of the stuff is like, it's really about I think probably the hardest thing for artists in this space is pricing. Um and there's a lot of different questions, a lot of different challenges, and there's no like one easy answer. That's probably what I spend the most time, um that, and just sort of like if people are multi-chain, like strategizing how they separate their series and how they do certain kind of releases and the rhythm of that. But I wind up talking to um, young artists or new artists in the space like a lot about pricing, because it's so complicated, and because it can fuck you up so bad. Like it really is. But I think that the if I was going to give one piece of advice in that realm that I think is really applica- applicable across the board is, if you're going to raise your prices, do it in small increments, um, over time. The key is you want people to not even blink when they look at your pricing. So like, you know like that's why I think it's such a tool. It's such a gift to be a collector and an artist, because if you can really just put your own collector hat on and look at your own pricing through other people's eyes and be like, what makes sense, right? What's logical? And really keep at bay that fucking greedy side of yourself, or the side of yourself that's like, I won't even say greedy, the side of yourself that's like driven by scarcity and feeling like, you know, the wrong kind of scarcity, not not digital scarcity, but like scarcity mindset, in that you feel like, oh my god, I got to get all
Yeah.
this stuff out there because there's like the liquidity is going to run out, like the collectors are going to go away, I got to get all this shit out there right now, I got to sell as much as I can, blah 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 blah. Like,
Yep.
I think, you know, it's a huge, you do yourself a huge disservice by being driven by that in this space. And I think, like, the more you can really dig your heels in, take a long-term mindset and think, I'm not going anywhere. Like, hopefully the space isn't going anywhere. I believe that it isn't. And that's how I let that mindset guide my decision making. And it's done nothing but help me so far, even in the quote unquote bear market, which is like for me been the most amazing time in my entire like existence as an artist. So I think the more you can take a long-term approach, and be patient and humble, and sort of just, you know, when it comes to pricing, move slowly but steadily, you know, don't get stuck. But like, you know, when you inch it up and you raise it in a way that makes sense with how you're selling work, how there's a steady, you know, supply and demand. Like, I know a lot of artists get to this place where like, fuck supply and demand, like blah blah blah, like I'm gonna do whatever I want, blah blah blah. It's like supply and demand is not just a mechanism of capitalism, it's also just like a part of human psychology. So like, as much as I hate it too, like, you need to be aware of it and sort of play the game of it, because not because you want to make a ton of money, but because you care about your work, and you want it to not be overlooked, or to be seen as not valuable, or seen as not worth somebody's time. So like, I play the game of all this stuff, and like am very aware of supply and demand. I'm very aware of these mechanisms in these markets, because I love my work so much, and I don't want anything to distract from the work. So I try to just keep the pricing to be logical and to be like this thing that people don't think about.
It's really interesting to think of things that way, and make it to where it's not a stressor on yourself. I think is really important, right? It's like you need to be able to like fully walk forward and back every decision you're making, from pricing to your artwork. And I really enjoy the thought of like, how do I set myself up for success here? Like, I love my art so much. How do I make sure it doesn't fall flat? How do I make sure that that price point connects with where I am, time and place, and where the market is, time and place?
Yeah, totally. And like, also, I mean, if you're lucky, your life is going to be long and your career is going to be long, right? So if you take the mindset of like being a career artist, a lifelong artist, you have plenty of time to get to those crazy price points, right? If that's what your goal is. I can see how it's really tempting when when artists see other artists like just tearing up the charts, and they're just selling for, you know, tens of thousands of dollars or whatever. Um, but it's like, I like to like really, I mean, I've always been more of a like kind of like blue collar thinking artist. Same way, you know, my band got extremely successful. You know, we toured in tour buses, and we did all that kind of stuff, but we always approached it from a very like kind of like humble mindset, and thinking long term sustainability, right? So like, rather than always just like paying ourselves out in these huge like chunks of money, like every chance we got, we put it into like, an account and gave ourselves like a flat salary that just like carried on for years. Even times when we would be inactive, we would always have the money and our bills covered, right? So it's like that same thinking, I've taken that into this realm. It's like, okay, well, people think I'm crazy sometimes when I'm like, yeah, I'm actively like kind of repressing my price points sometimes. Like especially like on ETH, like for a long time there, there was a period where I made the mistake of jumping too fast, too quickly. And once I sort of got more experience and started seeing how things were and just understanding the market more and understanding like, collectors, I was like, I don't want to get to that. Like, I don't like right now, I'm just like not in a hurry to get past that 5 ETH kind of mark, right? Like, I'm just like, I don't know, the market's changing every day, so maybe I will tomorrow. But, um, you know, um, I've been thinking for a while now, like, okay, like I want to hang in this zone until it's ridiculous that I'm in this zone. And like more and more lately, I've had collectors say like, you should be higher. Like you could be more. You could definitely be going for more. And I'm like, okay. I mean, like I'll consider it, but I want to get to the point where it's like a no brainer once I get to that point. And also, a lot of artists need to like be aware of the fact that there's more collectors in certain price zones, right? So once you get past a certain level, the amount of collectors just it gets significantly less, right? And
Yep.
that's the same
Yep.
as the traditional art market too, you know. So every artist needs to find that sort of like that like that golden zone where it's like, oh, I have a lot of demand and also there's a lot of collectors and also I have a lot of like productivity in me to make work. So um I don't think there's any such thing as um like I think over minting is sort of like a misunderstood phenomenon. I just think that like, it needs to be logical. Like you can mint
Yep.
10 times a month if you have 10, if you have 20 buyers interested, right? Like,
Yep.
because you know what I mean? So yeah, this is all the stuff that you learn along the way, and it gets easier and easier as you go.
I mean, it's quite the masterclass here today. I feel like I really enjoyed this conversation and just getting to hear about the way that you think of things. That's really the whole point of us doing these conversations a little bit more in depth. Is people can listen back to this and really pull some things that you had to cut your teeth to learn. Right? It's like
Hmm.
like that's the point of us veterans in the space, right? It's so that we can teach you via our mistakes and our successes to what worked. And it's going to be different for each person, their formula, but you get bits of the numbers from every person. It's like I take a little bit of what I learned from here, what I learned from here, what I learned from here, and then I apply it to myself. And I think that this has just been a conversation full of just amazing things here. So again, I really appreciate you. We're coming up on an hour though, so I want to be super mindful of your time. And I
I
want to
could
ask
go
you.
as long as you want.
Amazing, amazing. I'm
Yeah.
going to ask you two more questions then, and the first one is like a little bit more speculative, and the next one's like really just like a fun question. Um, the first one being like, where do you see the future of the art scene on Solana going? I feel like we're in this really amazing spot right now where it's like Solana's first real bear market, right? And we're seeing this art community come together in a really special way. But I'm just curious from like you're looking in, like where do you see the art scene here going?
I don't know. It's a really hard thing to say other than just like to me, you know, I think, chains, all chains, I mean, I mint on three different chains, right? On Tezos, Ethereum, and Solana. And there's special things about all of them. And and there's unique things about all of the communities, right? But what I'll say is like, you know, seeing um, the cycles on Ethereum and just sort of like kind of like overlaying some of them onto this like early phase of Solana, like it all just seems like right on track to me. You know what I mean? Like I feel like, you know, there's conflicts, there's triumph, like it's all happening, right? Innovations happening, cool shit is happening every day. Some um you know, there's a new feature added on exchange, or there's like some exciting thing happening in the community, and I'm seeing artists artists on Solana um, doing cool stuff the same way I'm seeing it on other chains too. Like there's just no exceptions there, right? And I think seeing that, okay, so like when I first started minting on Solana, Sol was like worth over $100, right? And so I've watched the whole thing happen. And the thing that's interesting is that, like, yeah, you're gonna see some artists bail, or you're gonna see some collectors freak out. Like, you're gonna see all of that, and I've seen that happen on the other two chains too. Um, but ultimately, what you see is like this doubling down of like, all right, like, why are we really here? And also, it starts to make you more aware of like the dynamics of pricing your work in crypto. Um, you know, like I don't it's just to me, I find it really intriguing and interesting, and like I wouldn't say that I have any like um words of wisdom in that regard. I think that's one of the more challenging and sort of mystifying aspects of crypto art is figuring out like how do you manage this like pricing your work in crypto when the cycles are so like erratic like this, right? But the I guess what I would say is that you do figure it out, and the thing that's cool about it is that the artists and the collectors seem to figure it out together, and sort of um, you know, like there's like this uh, hive mind that starts to happen where everyone just starts to agree what is reasonable, and prices fluctuate, and minting paces fluctuate, and things start achieving equilibrium again, even in these like big like ups and downs, you know. um but the through line is that art's being made the whole time, and art's being collected the whole time. And so I mean, what I've witnessed in the last, I don't know how long it's been since I first minted on Solo. I feel like it's been probably like at least 6 months, maybe 8 months. Fuck, I don't know. Um, I want to say I'm into it in April.
Crypto time is a weird thing too.
It is, dude. It's so weird. But like I've witnessed so much new energy come in, and I've witnessed just a lot of like special things happening in this whole community. So I don't know. I bet on it just getting bigger and more exciting. I don't. I think, you know, to say like, I don't know. It's weird. I like hesitate to like say you know, art scenes or whatever. I feel like it's so broad, right? Like there's
Yep.
so many different things happening and so many moving parts. But like um what I will say is like, because I guess it's hard for me to even identify like what is a soul artist, right? Like so many of the artists that I know there are multi-chain. And
Yep. Yep.
but when I first came there were some that were kind of exclusive there, and then there were a lot of collectors that were exclusive there. And so I heard someone very early on say that it was a good vibes chain, and I was like, yeah, that fits. Like that totally fits. And even though I would say a lot of the collectors even that were like exclusive there, I've seen them branch out and become more multi-chain.
Mhm.
You know, I see, I don't know, I still see those good vibes there, even through like drama.
Yep.
I've seen it shine, and it makes me extremely proud to be there. It makes me really excited about like the resilience. To me is just, it's a great sign of what's to come, you know, because for me personally, um, having so much success in the quote unquote bear market, you know, I've had so many people just say like, if you're doing this now, like during this, like you
Mhm.
just have no idea like what's ahead when things come back and they're really booming again. And I'm like, I'm kind of nervous about that. I'm like, I don't know what that's going to be like. But but uh but I have to say, like, I kind of feel the same way about the Solana community and about art on Solana. I feel like if it's this good now during all this, you know, then I can only imagine as the tools get more seamless, as like, you know, as the community becomes more and more dense and diverse, like it's just going to continue to thrive and grow. So I'm excited about it.
Yeah, me too, man. I think that kind of same sentiment can be shared between ETH, Tezos, and Solana, in my opinion. Like, I
Yeah.
think each of them are really maturing in beautiful ways. I love the good vibes. You know, like that's the thing is like Solana started as this good vibes chain, and then like from perception level of most people here, and then now it's kind of like we're kind of like meeting our maturity. You know, it's like, okay, like we just started off having fun, but now how do we
Yeah.
like take this to the next level? Like, how do I take myself more seriously as a creator on the blockchain as a whole? So I think there's been a lot of like really fun maturing conversations happening, including the drama, right? It's like you got to scrape your knee to really learn how to ride the bike. Like, let's be real.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, for me, it's like I'm, again, like thinking about music, thinking about collaboration, and like all of the moments of like immense progress that I've ever been privy to or been a part of have come out of conflict. You know, they come out of these, you know, difficult conversations. They come out of like um, good intentions, right? Like, and like basically people people collaborating and compromising, and you know, eventually the group vision becomes born and becomes clear, more clear
Yep.
as these conversations happen and as these conflicts happen. So I mean, without conflict you don't progress. So I think
Agree.
I think it's important, and I've been impressed to see how it's been navigated and how a lot of things seem to always, you know, anything that seems kind of like um dramatic or scary, essentially, you know, if you fast hit the fast forward button, it winds up being like, oh, thank God that happened because now we got this, you know.
Yep. No, absolutely. I want to end us off somewhere super fun, maybe a little intimidating as well. I don't know, like,
Uh-oh.
but that's just where do you see yourself going next creatively? And you've already like kind of expressed that this is the long play for you. You know, you get to explore your mind, and we all get to be on the experiment, which is ADHD, which I personally love about the journey of art in general. But I'm just curious on where you are planning to keep pushing yourself creatively, right? Like ignore the financial aspects, any of that, just like where you want to discover with your artwork.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I think I mean, not to bring it back to financial stuff, but I think a big thing for me recently was like feeling frustrated by the mindset in digital art, or like kind of like the restriction in digital art that a one of one equals a one of one, you know, this mindset of like your floor price, etc. So my way of sort of playing with that a little bit was to do that sleep studies series that I did, which was, you know, I sold those for a fraction of my normal price and felt like I was able to navigate that in a way that made sense for collectors and for me, creating a series that was more accessible, of unique works, one of one works, that I didn't feel pressured to, you know, price at the same floor that I had, for one of ones previous. And so I got to like not only like offer some accessible work to some new collectors who otherwise would have been priced out, but I got to explore um, how to present like a kind of large body of work all at once in a successful way here. So when I think about the future, it's kind of like more like that to me was exciting because I hadn't seen a ton of people do it successfully yet, right?
Mhm.
And also because the market forces are so strong that I think they scare a lot of collectors from experimenting and trying to say like, you know, like I don't think that has to be the way. Like I want to try something else.
Right.
So that that was a turning point for me because it felt like I had reached a point like in my positioning where I felt confident enough to do that and that I wasn't going to be, you know, I mean, it was risky, but at the same time, it felt more like exciting.
Mhm.
And I felt very in touch with like my existing collector base having like having their support for trying something like that. So when I think about the future, it's more of these experiments of like just getting closer and closer to making the market part of it sort of like seamless, invisible, not interfering with like the creative part of it. Um, and for me, it's really just about continuously experimenting and staying in this weird like perma flow state of just like um,
Yep.
you know, just creating nonstop, um, and being in a place where I don't know, like, you know, I never in a million years would have guessed, when I started doing this, like, almost 2 years ago, that, like, I would have people making work that, like, looks like mine. Like, or, like, you know, and I mean that in, like, you know, an endearing sense. Like, I've seen people and heard people say, like, that they're influenced by my work, and that kinda blows my mind. So I don't know, I just, like, feel like, the way I got there and the way I got here, I guess, is by following that creative intuition inside and, like, showing parts of myself, obviously, that has to be a part of it too, like, it's not just the work, it's, like, um,
Yep.
being a part of communities and trying to help move what we're doing here, like, in the right direction, um, and support artists in a way, that is like sustainable, you know, and like I don't know that's all of the stuff that's exciting to me. Like I want to be like the I'm finally in a place now where I'm like maybe I'm gonna be like holding a few of my own spaces, like where I can talk to other artists and even bring on like collectors too, and like facilitate like meaningful conversation about art and not just like finance, right? To
Yep.
talk more about how art relates to culture and how, you know, what we're doing here doesn't have to like start and end on like, you know, the leaderboards. Like there's bigger things than that. So so yeah, I mean that's a vague answer. And it's big and broad, but that's kind of how I like it because I don't like to box myself in. You know, otherwise I would just tell you like, well, next month I want to make a digital sculpture that's made out of 3D scans, and like I don't know. I have no idea. Um, I'm just gonna keep trying to make work that like completely fulfills me and excites me.
I think that's a perfect answer, honestly. I think right there, what you just said is what every artist should do. Before you put out that piece, you know, does that completely fulfill you? If not,
Yeah,
maybe don't put it on the blockchain. This lasts
yeah,
forever. Like,
yeah,
if you
totally.
don't fully love it, maybe reconsider.
Yeah,
And that's not saying that you can't fall in and out of love with certain pieces. We do that all the time as artists, right? But I think
totally.
that initial aha needs to be there. And it's been really cool getting to hear like some of the ways that you reach those moments. It's like, yes, it's all a big broad experiment, but at times in that experiment, you hit a milestone, you hit a part where all of a sudden something clicks in, and then like things are very clear. So I just really appreciate your very open candor on like how you go around these things, and your view on just how you are as an artist. I really appreciate that.
Thank you, my friend. Thanks for the chat. It was awesome.
Yeah, this was really great. And definitely let us know about the space. I will be there listening and absorbing. The bear market is the time for these kind of conversations. Get to the little bit more
Damn it.
meaning, get a little bit deeper, and then when the bull market comes, we can talk about wag me and pump the numbers again. But we'll remember what got us there, though.
Yeah, hopefully. Let's do that.